Okay, so this is an attempt at a little bit of a longer distance trip out, FPVing the Traveller. I've got the motors shimmed quite severely down the way, using a piece of cable tie, so I think they're probably shimmed by about a good millimetre each at the top. And even with that, there is a tendency for it to still climb a little under throttle, but nowhere near as bad. And the C of G I am keeping a little bit further forward than the mark. I would guess at the moment, I think on this flight it was about halfway between the hole and the front of that sort of H-shaped mark or whatever it is under the wings. So she's running on a Multistar 5200. The all-up weight's about 1400, so she's quite hefty. And I'm using my Mark 1 run cam as my flight and record camera, and just with a panning servo, just a 180 pan servo. I haven't got enough channels left by the time I use 3 position switches and blah 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 on the flight controller. And I need rudder obviously on this plane. I haven't got enough for tilt and pan, so I've just gone for the pan, as you can see. So there's the Carnegie 2200 kV motors. They're a little bit overkill, I think. There's plenty of power, and certainly, you know, it gives you almost vertical power up if you want it, but throttled back to you would imagine somewhere around the sort of 6 amp mark. They are giving me round about, I'd say about 18 minutes flight time before getting to the point where you wouldn't want to lower the battery any further, down to about 11 point, I think it was about 11.1 volts. So it's gone into return. Well, I purposely put it into return to home here, just to make sure it's all working. I'm using the Carnegie T1000 basic flight controller with return to home, which works okay. It doesn't manage throttle though, but it seemed to work okay with this, and it certainly worked okay with the plane that I pinched it from, which was a 2-meter Sky Surfer. So heading back out the way, we're just going to go up to that sort of farm land. You can see the decent sort of fields in the distance there, which it was a shade under 4K when I turned. Could have gone further, but it's early days with this, and it was also quite windy, so it wasn't a hugely enjoyable trip. I just wanted to try her out. I'm still nervous about it going into any spiral dive, so I think the problem is that I had a tendency to not realise from this camera angle that perhaps I was nose up and not always keeping an eye on the speed, the airspeed. I think once she dropped the nose, or dropped a wing and started the spiral, because you can't turn this flight controller off, the thing fights itself and you just can't get out the spiral dive. Occasionally I think you can, given a bit of time and thought, I think you can power out of it, but so far most of my sort of spirals have been sort of under 100 meters and just haven't had time. But she's built like a brick. What's it? This EPP is particularly strong. Both Captain Crash and I have spiraled these into the ground a couple of times each, and okay, not into solid ground, but fairly firm grass at high speed. Plus I've dived mine flat out into a tree from quite high, and there's barely a scratch on them. I dare say we will manage to totally obliterate them eventually, but you might be able to see how I've shimmed that motor down there. But I daren't fly it without a stabiliser. The few times I've tried, I just find it such a handful, and I decided that You know, if I can get it reliable with a flight controller, then that'll do me for now, and the rest of you can sort out the getting it right, and I'll pinch your ideas. So here we are on the return trip. I gave it a bit of a gun, and she was doing about 65 miles an hour flat out on the level, and on the way up, cruising up against the wind, which was not huge, it was about a 10 mile an hour headwind. She was averaging about 26 miles an hour, but she will hold the altitude at quite low RPMs. I'm going to stick my amps meter, or amps part of the GOSD3 kit that I've got. I'll stick it in for another flight and just see what it is drawing, but it's just extra weight and it's quite a chunky bit of kit, so I didn't really want to use it. So here we are. I think shortly I'll just knock the motors off and then just go in for a glide. I think before I edited this flight, I think the flight in total was only about 14 minutes. But you can cover quite a bit of ground because there are no slouches. That's down there where I piled it into the trees the last time. I think just as long as you keep the nose flat or down and power on in turns, you're probably okay. I really hope we do sort these out, because the beauty of being able to carry a little suit, briefcase type thing around with you and pop these out on a journey somewhere and have a little play around would be great. But if you're going to risk losing them in unfamiliar territory every time you do it, then they're not really going to really fit the bill. So let's hope we can get them sorted. The airframe's certainly capable of carrying this sort of weight and flying quite slowly. I'm curious to know what would happen if you lost an ESC or a motor, or for some reason one motor pegged out mid-flight. How do you reckon we could get them back? I've got a feeling I'd probably just have to glide it down for a landing wherever this happened, because I can't believe that you'd be able to control it with one motor. And here we come in for a landing in our quality landing field. And that is about that, guys. Over and out. Bye for now.